People don't
Hmm.
realize those subtle little decisions may seem inconsequential, but what happens, it starts drifting us from who we are. And then we're like out in another land, and we're like, wait, I don't even feel like myself anymore. What the heck happened?
I'll have what she's having.
Welcome to another edition of
She talks confidence.
podcast.
Welcome back. This is the She Talks Confidence Podcast. I am Tony, your host as usual. And this week, another fantastic guest, author, PhD in nursing education. It's Victoria Pontell. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Tony.
Like I said, you have a PhD in nursing with an emphasis in women's health. You've been in nursing education for 25 years. And your book, 7 Keys, Unlocking Your Radiant Beauty. I love that. We're going to circle around and talk about that towards the end. But the theme today and the subject today is about reclaiming identity when you're not feeling enough. So it's either an imposter syndrome, it's a self-esteem issue. What is it in your experience with yourself and with other women that you see this as a predominant thing that needs to be talked about?
It can be so expansive because it shows up in every place in our life, honestly. And it's interesting because sometimes we think the identity is such a big concept that it's hard to get our arms around. But actually, you can tell a lot about identity, not from necessarily big dramatic life events, but from something as small as how do you order your morning coffee? If
Yeah,
you think about
really.
it,
Yeah.
are you the kind of person who orders the same thing every day? It's predictable, consistent, you're confident about what you're going to order? Or do you like to experiment, swap milks or change up flavors, or you're going to check
Mhm.
in how you feel that day? And then life happens. Maybe the line is long and the barista makes a mistake, or someone in front of you is taking a lot longer than you want. How do you
Mhm.
respond? And do you rush? Do you react? Or do you stay grounded?
It is
Yeah.
because everything is connected to everything, right? It all comes from the
Yeah.
top, and and every behavior and every action and every reaction that you have is based upon your particular identity. The thing that I've found is interesting with my clients and my past therapy experience is that so many people identify with their mind. They identify with the programs that they've been dealing with instead of really what identity is all about. And identity is all about your true self, right? Your inner self, really your spirit of who you are, your force, your soul. It's not necessarily about the programs from your mind level that are getting you to be reactive to things. And then a lot of people say, oh, that's just me. That's just how I am. That's really not true at all. That's how you're programmed to respond to something. It's not really who you are.
I think it's so good, Tony, and like really taking a moment to just saying, okay, what is identity really?
Right,
Because we
exactly.
know the things that are identifiers of us. It's those questions of what's your age, what's your gender, what's your
Mhm,
socioeconomic status, where do you live, what's your profession, what's your talents, gifts, education, all those
mhm,
things we tend to think, oh, this is our identity, this is what we do. And it's true. These are part of who we are, our life design. But if you go deeper within the self, if you look at the definition of identity, it says the fact of being of who a person is. But
mhm,
underneath all the labels and the expectations, we find something simple and powerful. And at our core, I would offer that we are love and we're kind, we're gentle, giving, loyal, faithful, and respectful people. And when we're rooted in that, that's how we operate. And so depending on your belief system, I think we all believe that we have a moral compass in our world. We all agree as a society that honesty is better than dishonesty. Truth telling is better than lying. Being faithful is better than being unfaithful. And so when we look at that and we say, okay, that's the deeper understanding of identity, the foundation of who we are before the world starts telling us who to be or what defines us.
mhm.
But here's the problem. Somewhere along the way, we lose touch with that and we start confusing what we do or what we have with who we are. And psychology actually has a name for this. Eric Erickson called it identity versus role confusion. And it's that
Mhm.
tension. He always has the two paths, either the kind of the more healthy path or the kind of path that can lead us to unhealthy waters. And so This starts in adolescence. Really, he said, identifying, okay, what is identity? It's when a person really understands, okay, who am I in this world? Versus that rule confusion when they're, I don't really know where I fit, you know? And so this is a real tension that we all go through.
I love the fact that you brought up Eric Erickson. He's one of my favorites. That he was like, I did paper after paper on I did the developmental stages, the stages of development that he did for kids through adolescence and young adulthood. I just love it. It's so true. And that isn't that the issue. The issue is people come in with the problems. Oh, this is how I'm acting, or this is where I'm at, and I feel stuck, and I feel this and that. Where they're caught on that particular level, where they don't elevate themselves into that level of which I like to call the collective unconscious. That's where the soul level, the spirit level, the presence level, the
Mhm.
awareness level, the being, if you want to, from an Eastern aspect. If you can rise above that and get into that mindset of that, find a way to do that, it really takes all that other stuff and minimalizes it. It minimalizes the fact that you may be 32 and single and have a full-time job in advertising or something, but that's not who you are. And so the hardest part is reframing the narrative with somebody as a client, to not seeing themselves as all these things on paper, but to see themselves as just themselves, in that joy and that ease and that lightness, and to take the pressure off of themselves. When you talk to somebody and they're stuck in that, how do you go about triggering them or getting them to pivot and to reframe into that more being mindset?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I there are a couple areas that are counterfeit, that they're counterfeits to identity, especially for women, I feel. And so if just take body for example.
Oh, yeah.
We're told the heart is what matters most. But then the world shouts at us something completely different. It tells us our body determines our worth. How we look is
Hmm.
going to decide whether we're going to have favor, love, or success. And suddenly we're navigating this tension. We're trying to honor the heart while constantly being measured by a mirror. And when this happens, things got to get out of alignment. And the body starts driving our decisions instead of following the direction of our inner self. So if I don't feel good about myself, even though there may be a great destiny thing for me out there, but I'm sitting on the couch. And
Yeah.
so we really have to say, gosh, am I letting my body drive my decisions, or am I letting my inner self, my heart's desires, who I'm deciding to be, driving me? Because that can really get upside down. So the body is a big deal, because here's the truth: your body was never meant to define you, it was actually meant to carry you.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so that's one place to really, when the inner self leads, you're going to find peace, you're going to find your direction. Because right now we're sitting in a place there, it's no wonder 96% of women feel dissatisfied with aspects of their body. And it's quietly shaping their life, their entire self. And so we've got to really flip that around somehow. And
You have
really,
such
we have to make that choice.
That's such a huge thing. I always use the analogy of, it's like your body image is a pair of glasses with like red tint. And so that's, you're
Mhm.
identifying with with that image, which, for the record, that judgment that you have on your own body is coming from the exterior. It's coming from what you hear. It's coming from other people and other things and social media. And it's convincing you of having a particular identity because you don't stack up or measure up or compare to, or whatever the case. And that's the ego is getting it. So it's almost like, you're walking around without glasses, and all of a sudden you put on this pair of red tinted glasses, and then now you're making decisions and judgments based upon that being the reality of this red tint. But it's not. That's not the world. It's, you're seeing through these lenses that are not accurate. And then it's leading you to make decisions and to have opinions about yourself that are inaccurate. And then that just is a downward spiral. And then what you start to do is you start to look for other things in the world that support that red tint opinion of yourself. And that's where the downward spiral comes from. How do you break out of that pattern?
Yeah, that's a good question. Self awareness is a good first step. It's a big area though for women. And I just want to touch a little bit on another big one. Oh, two other big ones. Just another one
Hmm.
is work, our profession, or school.
Hmm.
Like that can be another counterfeit place to find identity. And from a young age, we're taught to chase achievement, grades, promotions, titles, performance. All these things seem to measure our success. And while these things are valuable parts of our life, they're never meant to be the definition of who we are. They're
Hmm.
meant to be expressions of who we are, not the source of our identity. And they should flow from who we are, not decide who we are. And that can get really reversed. And what happens is we begin to equate our worth with our productivity. And we
Yep.
start believing that. And over time, this mindset leads to burnout, frustration, and emptiness because no accomplishment can fill that space that only identity was designed to hold. And so it can get really wompy. And if our
Hmm.
identity is in work, what happens when we get fired? We can really be crazy. And it's really how we handle those things because you can look at accomplishment. Let's say, Tony, you and I are both students. We have to study for an exam and
Hmm.
you are responsible. Like you totally study, you prioritize, you take the
Hmm.
time, and you're ready. And I don't. I'm like blowing it off, having fun, doing my thing. And oh, wow, I find it opens me up to find this cheat sheet right online or whatever. I find the test bank, right? So we both take the
Hmm.
test, we get A's, but there's a difference, right? You have been faithful and honorable to your core self because that's who you are.
Hmm.
Whereas I may get the A, I get the same outcome, but there's a big difference. I separated myself from my best self because I just decided to go ahead and do it this way. And so people don't
Hmm.
realize those subtle little decisions may seem inconsequential, but what happens, it starts drifting us from who we are. And then we're like out in another land and we're like, wait, I don't even feel like myself anymore. What the heck happened? It's because we've been chipping
Exactly.
away sometimes at the best of ourselves. And so we got to get back. And the good news is today's a new day. And that's the beauty of life. We all fall
Mm-hmm.
in the ditch, right? But how long are we going to live in the ditch? We got to get back on the road that's going to be best for our life journey.
Hmm. I think it's a really good point because, especially nowadays, people are, it's such a competitive nature because of social media, especially, and it feeds to the
Mhm.
ego. And the ego is the part where that level in your brain where it's very reactive and it's really not you, but it's something that you do because you feel as though you have to protect yourself. That's the ego, right? That's not the true self. And so many women get into that particular level of identity, but the thing is it's like a moving carrot, right? You just keep moving the carrots on the stick. You fulfill one part, but then there's always going to be another part, or you'll always move it, you'll always move the line. It'll never be enough. And especially when you had indicated, you talked about achievements in work, it's like results based identity. So you close a deal and that's great. But then the next day you're back to, well, now what do I have to do to feel whole and complete?
Mhm.
Operating on that level creates anxiety and it creates depression, so much negative energy. So when it comes to identity and snapping women out of it, especially, are there any particular steps that you like? Do you like meditation? Do you like journaling? What do you find effective to get yourself
Mhm.
grounded again and back into that presence and the being?
Yeah, I think that it's really important to be self aware, like those moment to moment, may seem small moments in life, but taking inventory, like stopping, okay, how did I just respond to that? Or am I starting to get impatient? Do I need to root back to patience? You know what I mean? What's going on for me? Because I think having that connection with yourself is really important because then you can understand yourself like what's going on for me. Okay, gosh, maybe I'm feeling more stressed out today because of XYZ. Really having that connection with yourself is really an important part of what we're talking about today.
Oh, it's huge. You know what came to mind was you've got a PhD in nursing education. With your vast experience in nursing, how does all of this correlate into that? What have you seen in your experience in regards to this in terms of identification?
Nursing education, we would have students come in to become nurses and they had the heart's desires to be nurses. And sometimes they were single moms. And we would
Hmm.
always, it was so great because they'd come and with kids and putting it all on the table. And just, it was
Hmm.
beautiful to encourage them in their heart's desires and the discovery of moving in it, right? Because it can be hard to push through. Oh, it can be more comfortable to say no to things. But
Hmm.
when people recognize, okay, no, this is within me and I want to step out and go for it, but there were times where we'd have people come in and I taught nursing leadership and I would ask the students, how is it that you came to nursing? And Mostly it was heart's desire, but on occasion was like, my mom told me to do this. And so
Right.
you're okay. You hope that their heart catches up with it. But it
Hmm.
really is, life is such an adventure and a journey, and it's full of discovery. And we have the opportunity to step out in that. And if we let the outside circumstances influence us, then it's going to be harder. But if we stay connected, oh gosh, I think I want to start taking a Pilates class or whatever it is, just being aware. One of the nurse researchers, when I was getting my PhD, she studied the concept of compliance. And she
Mm.
felt that she really wanted to dig deep into compliance because if she understood what would help people fulfill what their doctor's orders were to change exercise, diet, nutrition, de stress, then if she could
Yeah.
understand what would help them stay true to the doctor's orders, then that could be used for heart disease, diabetes, stroke, whatever. So if she could understand compliance, it would be movable. It's the same thing with
Hmm.
identity. Identity, we take ourselves, our core identity, and that moves into our circumstances. It's not that the circumstances move into us. We move in, whether it's our marriage, whether it's friendships, whether it's our work. We are taking that self into all of these different spaces. And I
Yeah.
really think it's
Is it
important
moving
to,
from the inside out? Is that what you're saying?
yeah,
Moving from the
yeah,
inside out?
you
Yeah.
take yourself into those spaces. They're not defining you. And a lot of people struggle with worth. And so if I said to you, Tony, hey, head over to the grocery store and get yourself a drink, you're going to walk into the grocery store and you're going to see a sea of possibilities, right? There's
Hmm.
waters, there's
Hmm.
kombuchas, pop, juice, but you are not going in there thinking, oh, I'm not worthy to pick a drink. You're going to check in with yourself and say, oh, I think this sounds good to me. And you're going to go pick up your drink and get in and leave. It's the
Hmm.
same with life. We have a sea of possibilities, but what is it that we're moving into so that we're not stagnating in our lives and so that we can move into the fullness of who we are?
What I found with women, it always comes back to the unsurety, the lack of trusting of who they
Mm-hmm.
are. Because they would say, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I would pick. My argument is if you allow yourself to enter that realm and to have some self compassion and to just be okay sitting with yourself without judgment, because judgment comes from that mind identity level. Judgment doesn't come from the true self level. It doesn't exist there, because the true self level
Right.
is it is, right, whole and complete. And if you allow yourself to sit there, then you will be able to determine what you're going to pick out to drink at the store, which, by the way, that's a great analogy. I love that because it makes perfect sense, right? It should be as simple as that because it comes from the same place. And yet
Right.
there's so much identity wrapped up in exterior reinforcement stuff from the world and from the ego level of the mind that creates the cognitive dissonance, that the two beliefs clashing at the same time. And that's where stress comes in and anxiety comes in and all of these physical issues, because the body really is, the emotions speak through the body. And with your
Mm.
emotions, it's going to change physiology. As you, in nursing, is that it could be a big determining factor in terms of how you feel physically. And that's initially where it comes from. I'm I want to pivot a little bit back to the nursing thing because I have such respect for nurses because are they're the bread and butter. They're really the group that keeps things moving. And my daughter she had leukemia,
Mm.
AML, and went through that. And I
Mm.
got a chance to
Mm.
spend a few months around an incredible set of women. And there were a few men in there that were nurses, but
Mm.
mostly women. And I really started to marvel at really the mindset of a nurse that's so different. And I think it goes into a lot about what we're talking about, because I think the
Mhm.
selfless nature of nurses, the fact that they're so giving and they're so attentive to what they're trying to do and to help people really to get better physically. But I think that is an analogy in terms of just getting somebody better. Do you find nurses have a different mindset than most people?
Mm. I think what happens is when nursing from the beginning, we learn holistic health, right? So we are considering body, mind, social circumstances. We look under every rock in somebody's life. And so we really see that as valuable because it can be impacting a person and so we really are trained in kind of this whole holistic mindset. But I think
Hmm.
for nurses or for anybody, these ideas that we're talking about today with the core identity, they're
Hmm.
expansive because you can take a concept like love, right? And love grows, it expands in our life. Like when you have children, you learn love in a new you grow in a new way. When you get married, when you
Hmm.
lose a loved one, you understand love in a new way. When you have heartbreak, you learn love in a new way, right? And kindness,
Hmm.
it's easy to be kind when people are kind to us, but what happens when someone's not kind to us and we have to dig deeper within ourselves to be kind, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so maybe nurses are confronted with more circumstances where they have to grow within themselves in some of these, like you said, like being selfless. And I think in all of our lives, though, we have those opportunities where that deeper part of us grows and expands in those seasons of our lives. We all have those opportunities, unless we're like, yeah, I'm checking out, I'm staying in my comfort zone. But when we step out in
Right.
life, that's the beauty of our growth in life, I believe.
Oh God, 100%. And I was going to ask you, do you feel as though nurses have an extra half step ahead in terms of really understanding what the true essence is about? Do they tap into that more, do you think?
I do believe that in the education, we're taught that, we teach that. And so I
Hmm.
think that's a good thing, right? Because we should
Oh,
be,
yeah.
yeah, I think that kind of mindset of looking bigger and deeper is important for all of us. Yeah, because it
Oh,
is like you said, there are places that we get lost, and another a big one for women is relationships. They can really get thinking that relationships are supposed to complete them when they're really supposed to complement them. And so that's a whole nother basket that we could go into, but it's just another place where other people, if they're carrying chaos or something, and we don't want to lose ourselves because of their chaos. And so we have to find that place of having healthy boundaries too, with that being unapologetic, right? Being It's not a
yeah.
wall, but it's a framework to protect the inner self and your own destiny. So that's another big one.
We could do, Victoria, we could do a whole show on the whole relationship thing in terms of losing
Yeah.
identity and getting enmeshed in somebody. That's why a lot of women stay in terrible relationships because they feel as though they'll have no identity. This is mostly unconscious, but if they leave, who
Mhm.
are they? And I've seen that with empty nesters too. I've worked with some empty nesters and they're like, oh, my kids are gone. Now who am I? I'm not a mom anymore. No, you are, but that's not your sole identity. That's why identity is such a
Yeah.
huge thing. And
So
it's like turning the Titanic or the Queen Mary or some big huge ship. You got to turn the wheel, but it's going to take a long time to make the turn. You just got to be patient and have a level of self-compassion when it comes to that. And that's the message I think that we're trying to.
I love that you said that, Tony, because that's the thing, like that self compassion. Because again, instead of being judging of yourself, again,
Hmm.
that core self, instead of being harsh on yourself, be gentle, right? Choose
Yep.
gentleness. And just, it's really, this whole thing is so important because when you think back to Eric Erickson and the identity versus role confusion, okay, let's say somebody's on the role confusion and they head into the next stage, which is a young adulthood, right? And then we're
Hmm.
heading into intimacy versus isolation. Well, going
Hmm.
into a intimate relationship with role confusion it's gonna make it not as easy because
Yeah.
you may lose yourself with that other person.
Yeah.
And or
100%.
you isolate and you're like, yeah, I'm out. Or you're in
Yep.
a relationship but you get lost. And
Yep.
then the next stage is middle adulthood, where that
Hmm.
generativity, am I bopping along? Am I beating the drum that I'm supposed to be beating? Am I thriving in my life versus that
Yeah.
stagnation where I wanted to do that, but I just
Yeah.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G kept me away. And so we feel
Right.
this stagnation. And then finally, that final stage of that integrity versus despair, where
Hmm.
integrity, where we felt like, yeah, I felt that purpose in my life. I felt that expression of me versus despair, where there's regret. Like, gosh, I should have done that. Why didn't I do that? And not that there's any condemnation here. It's just that That's a big cost to go through our whole life and not be connected to who we are in our life design. And so I think that's, again, today's a new day and we're all on this journey together. But it is a big cost to not stop and talk about this. And so that's why I'm so thankful that you're taking the time to talk about this, because we need to be talking about this, because we can be so distracted in life and just, this is what we do.
That's 100%. And I think one of the main points that you have just indicated is it's never too late. Depending upon
No.
what stage of life you're in, it's never too late. If you end up being the bitter old guy sitting on the porch being all bent because somebody else followed their passion or followed, what they wanted to do and you didn't, it doesn't mean you can't go in and turn on
Mhm.
the internet and start learning something. It doesn't
That's right.
mean that you're done, because that's not, again, it's mind identification. Mind identification is very closed, and there's a lot of negative reinforcement when it comes to that. But your true self, that where the joy and the ease and the lightness come from, that's all there is up there in the true essence of love, right? And the self-compassion, that's where that is. And it's easy to get to, but it's not, because you have to really make that shift, that mind shift into that. But it is possible. And if you do have any questions, or if you do want to figure out how to do that on a step by step, then get a hold of Victoria, get a hold of me, go
Mhm.
find a book that'll start the journey for you. There's a number of books out there. And speaking of books, let's finish off by talking about yours, because I'm interested in your approach to these 7 keys to unlocking your radiant beauty. And I'm going to assume
Right.
this is for women, but it could be for women or men, right?
Totally, because we all are battling things about our body, and typically women are susceptible, but men as well. And really it's about how we're taking care of ourselves. And so the
Mm-hmm.
book is really about coming into your best self in your body, and looking at the 7 keys are looking at different areas that can really sidetrack us, that take us off of being our best self. For example, one chapter is on exercise and rest. And some people can get in some really rigid exercise routines where they're flat out exhausted, their body's stressed out, but they feel like they got to be at that gym for 2 hours. And so it's about,
Yeah.
again, what we're talking about today, Tony, because it's coming back to reconnect. Like, has that taken on kind of something that's not best for me, right? And so really trying
Mm-hmm.
to understand the body. And then food is what we put in our body. A lot of women struggle with food, and I know ladies who get into food distortions maybe as early as adolescence, and they last, they're in their 60s and still have these control issues. But we don't have to live like that. We can live in freedom. And so it's really an invitation to finding that path of freedom about your body, but also recognizing and empowering people that you have a choice. You have a
Mm-hmm.
choice, and really to understand yourself, because what you need for your body, Tony, is going to be different than what I need. And that's okay. And so celebrating that and understanding that.
That's such a huge point. Context is a huge point. Understanding your unique needs is a big thing, especially nowadays. Bouncing your and comparing and judging you versus the insta fit person online, which is absolute nonsense. That, I think that's such a great point. The book is 7 Keys to Unlocking Radiant Beauty, and I'm assuming you can find it on Amazon. Anywhere else?
Yeah, it's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. If you go to my Instagram, you can buy it through there.
Perfect. And then, so Victoria Pontell, where else can somebody get a hold of you or find your stuff?
I'm on Instagram, Victoria Lynn Pontell, Lynn Pontell. I'm on Instagram, and I've been doing a every Tuesday a illustration of Zoe's adventures. So it's a girl she's 25 and she's dealing with life within herself,
Hmm.
relationships, friendships, family, and so it's been a lot of fun. So come join me there and say hello, and yeah, I would love to meet you.
Oh, that's great. Okay, then I'll put that in the show notes too, for sure. So that's great. Thank you, Victoria. I really appreciate it. That's such a fun conversation. And again, we could have gone off on 27 different tangents about this stuff,
Oh,
because
great.
I am so entwined in this identification thing, because it's so huge. And then the nursing thing, I have such respect for nurses, especially with my relatively recent experience, like really seeing in the trenches how they operate. And they're just saints, just absolute angels that walk the earth. So thank you for what you do and for the population that you educate to help people through terrible times. And so I love that. In terms of me, it's tonydufresne.com, and you won't be able to spell it. Some family members can. You can go to theconfidencedoc.com. I have a couple programs that you can get into, some small free PDFs, some workshops that you can go online and check those out. The podcast is She Talks Confidence. You're listening to it somewhere, but there's also YouTube shorts out there, and YouTube if you are not watching on YouTube. I hope things are great, and we will talk to you soon.